Everyone has a past. Some chapters are bright and joyful, while others are locked away, buried deep where no one can see. But what happens when a hidden chapter refuses to stay hidden? When it resurfaces, shaking the foundation of everything you've built? Stay with me till the end, because what I'm about to reveal might just change the way you see love, trust, and second chances. We all have a past. Some parts we cherish, others we bury so deep that even we pretend they never existed. But the truth is, no matter how hard you try to lock away certain memories, they find their way back. And when they do, they don't just knock, they break the door down. Before marriage, I lived a life no one knew about, a life filled with choices I wasn't proud of, moments I wished I could erase, and a love I thought would last forever, until it didn't. Back then, I wasn't the person I am today. I was reckless, chasing happiness in places I should have never been, believing in people I should have never trusted. And then, there was him. He walked into my life when I was at my most vulnerable, at a time when I was searching for something, anything, to fill the emptiness inside me. His words felt like warmth on a cold night, his presence a shield from the loneliness I refused to admit I felt. I didn't know then that sometimes the things that feel safe can be the most dangerous of all. We built something together, or at least I thought we did. Late-night conversations, stolen moments, whispered promises that made me believe in a future I never imagined for myself. He made me feel like I was finally enough, like I didn't have to keep searching for validation elsewhere. But love, real love, isn't built on illusions, and illusions always shatter. At first the cracks were so small I barely noticed them. A missed call here, a vague excuse there. The way he would look away when I asked him about his plans. The way his words started to feel rehearsed rather than real. But I ignored it. I told myself that love requires trust, that doubt was just my own fear trying to ruin something good. Then, one night, reality hit me harder than I could have ever expected. I remember it so vividly, as if my heart refuses to let me forget. I had planned a surprise for him, something simple, just a quiet evening, just us. I arrived early, excited, hopeful. But what I walked into wasn't the man I thought I knew. There he was, standing too close to someone else, whispering words that once belonged to me. His hands, the same hands that held mine, now reaching for another. His smile, the same one that made me feel special, now directed at someone new. In that moment, I felt the floor beneath me disappear. The air in my lungs turned to ice. I wanted to scream, to demand an explanation, to ask why, but I already knew the answer. I had spent so much time convincing myself that what we had was real, that I ignored the signs telling me otherwise. The truth was, I was just another chapter in his story, temporary, replaceable. I left without saying a word. No confrontation, no final goodbye. I didn't need to hear his excuses, I didn't need closure. Because in that moment I realised something. The person I had become in that relationship was someone I didn't recognise, someone who ignored red flags, who settled for half-truths, who gave love without asking for respect in return. That night I promised myself I would never be that person again. I disappeared from his world, erased his number, cut every tie that connected us. And for years I convinced myself that I had moved on, that I was free. But some ghosts don't stay buried. And just when I thought I had left that chapter behind forever, the past found me again, this time when I least expected it. They say time heals all wounds. But what they don't tell you is that some wounds don't fade. They just hide beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to remind you they were never really gone. After walking away from the past, I spent years rebuilding myself. I learned to love again, not just someone else, but myself. I became stronger, more cautious with my heart, more aware of the signs I had once ignored. And then, when I least expected it, I met someone who changed everything. He was different. He didn't just speak love, he showed it in every little thing he did. The way he listened when I spoke, the way he noticed the smallest details about me, the way he made me feel safe without ever making me feel small. He didn't ask for my past, didn't dig into the chapters I had left behind. To him, I was enough just as I was. For the first time in my life, I felt like I could breathe without fear. As our love grew, so did my hope for a future I had once thought was impossible. And then it happened, he proposed. It wasn't grand or extravagant. It was quiet, intimate, filled with a kind of sincerity that made my heart ache in the best way possible. I said yes. In that moment I believed my past had no hold over me anymore, that the version of me who had once been lost, broken and betrayed had finally been left behind. I was ready to step into this new life, to embrace happiness without fear of it being ripped away. But life has a way of testing you just when you think you've won. It was just days before the wedding when I found it. A letter. At first, I thought it was another wedding-related message, maybe a heartfelt note from a family member or an old friend. But then I saw the handwriting. A name I had erased from my life was written on the envelope. My heart stopped. My hands shook as I held the letter, my mind racing with questions I wasn't ready to answer. Why now? Why, after all these years? A part of me wanted to throw it away, to pretend I had never seen it. But another part, the one still haunted by unanswered questions, couldn't let go. With trembling fingers, I opened the letter, and the moment my eyes met the words, my world tilted. There's something you need to know before you say, I do. It felt like the past was reaching out, dragging me back into a chapter I had long since closed. The words blurred before me as emotions I had buried deep resurfaced. Anger, pain, fear. Why was he doing this? My heart pounded as I stared at the letter. The past wasn't just knocking, it was kicking the door open, forcing me to face what I had buried years ago. There's something you need to know before you say, I do. That one sentence clung to me, tightening around my chest like a rope, pulling me back to a place I never wanted to revisit. For years I told myself that part of my life was over, that I had walked away for good. But here it was, staring me in the face, daring me to open a wound I had spent so long trying to heal. I could have ignored it. I should have. But some ghosts refused to be forgotten. For hours I sat there, the letter clutched in my hands, debating what to do. Was this a desperate attempt to manipulate me? A cruel trick to shake my happiness just before I finally found peace? Or was there really something I needed to know? I didn't realise I was crying until I felt the warmth of tears sliding down my face. The fear of reopening old pain, the fear of ruining something good, the fear of not knowing. It was all consuming me at once. I had two choices. I could tear the letter apart, pretend it never existed, and move forward as if the past had no hold over me, or I could face it. The next morning, I made my decision. I agreed to meet him. Not because I missed him, not because I wanted to, but because I needed closure. The place we chose was neutral, a quiet cafe on the other side of town, away from anyone who might recognise us. As I walked in, I felt like I was stepping into a different lifetime, as if I had been transported back to the version of me who once believed he was my forever. And then I saw him. He looked the same, yet different. Older, more tired. His eyes carried the weight of something unsaid, something heavy enough to drag him back into my life when I had no space left for him. For a moment we just stared at each other, the air between us thick with everything we had left unsaid. Then he spoke. I never told you the full story. I felt my breath hitch. I didn't want to hear it. I had convinced myself for years that I knew everything I needed to know, that he was a liar, that he had betrayed me, that walking away was my only option. But something about the way he looked at me made me pause. I let him speak. And what he said next made my heart stop. The night you left, it wasn't what you think. My fingers tightened around the coffee cup in front of me, my pulse ringing in my ears. I never wanted to hurt you. What you saw, it wasn't what it looked like. But I let you believe it because I thought it was better that way. I wanted to scoff, to roll my eyes, to walk out and never look back. But a part of me, the part that still carried the ghost of that heartbreak, stayed. What do you mean? My voice barely sounded like my own. He took a deep breath, as if the words he was about to say had been trapped inside him for years. I had to push you away. I didn't want to, but I had no choice. There was something I was protecting you from. A bitter laugh escaped me. Protecting me? You call what you did protection? His jaw clenched. Yes. For the first time since I walked in, I saw something I had never seen in him before. Not guilt, not regret, fear. And that's when I realised there was something more. Something bigger than heartbreak and betrayal. Something I never saw coming. I leaned in, my heart racing. Tell me the truth. All of it. He hesitated for a moment, as if debating whether I was ready for what he was about to say. Then finally he spoke. And in that moment my world shattered all over again. His words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. I could hear the cafe around us, the clinking of cups, the soft murmurs of other conversations. But it all felt distant. The only thing that mattered was the next thing he was about to say. I never wanted to hurt you, he repeated, his voice lower this time. But I had to make you hate me. I felt my stomach twist. Make me hate him? I clenched my fists under the table, trying to control the storm brewing inside me. Why? What could possibly justify what you did? My voice was sharp, demanding, desperate for an explanation that made sense. He exhaled slowly, rubbing his hands together as if trying to gather the right words. Because if you stayed, you would have been in danger. I blinked. Danger? A cold shiver ran down my spine. My mind raced, trying to piece together memories, searching for anything that could explain this. He looked up, and for the first time I saw something raw in his eyes, something I had never seen before: fear, regret, pain. There were people after me, he admitted, people who would have used you to get to me. I couldn't let that happen. So I did the only thing I could. I pushed you away. I made sure you never wanted to see me again. I felt the breath leave my lungs. My heart pounded, my fingers trembling against the table. This isn't some excuse, he continued quickly, his voice almost pleading. I know what I did. I know how much I hurt you. But at the time, it was the only way to keep you safe. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to scream at him, tell him that he had no right to make decisions for me, that he should have told me the truth instead of leaving me to pick up the pieces of a broken heart. But instead, I just sat there, silent. Because deep down, I wasn't sure how to feel anymore. For years, I had lived with the belief that I had been abandoned, betrayed, used. But now, here he was, telling me that it was never about love lost. It was about protection. I swallowed hard. Why tell me this now? Why, after all these years, after I've moved on? His jaw tensed. Because you deserve the truth before you start the next chapter of your life. I felt my throat tighten, my wedding, my future, the life I had built after him. I had spent so much time convincing myself that I was free from my past, that I had healed. But sitting here, hearing this, I realised something terrifying. I had never truly let go. Even now, even after everything, a small part of me still held on to the pain, still clung to the unanswered questions, and now that I had the answers, I didn't know what to do with them. You're happy now, he said softly, and I won't ruin that for you. I just needed you to know I never stopped caring. I never stopped wishing things had been different. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to steady the emotions threatening to overwhelm me. I had spent so long believing he was the villain in my story, but now I wasn't sure anymore. Did that change the past? Number. Did it erase the pain? Number. But it made me see things differently. I had a choice to make. I could hold on to this, let it consume me, let it plant doubt in my mind, or I could finally, truly let go. I opened my eyes, looking at him one last time. Thank you for telling me, I said, my voice steady despite the chaos inside me. But this doesn't change where I'm going. A small, sad smile tugged at his lips. I know. And with that, I stood up. It was time to leave the past where it belonged. I walked out of the cafe, my heart pounding, my hands still trembling. The cool evening air hit my skin, but it did nothing to calm the storm raging inside me. My mind replayed every word he had said, every confession, every truth I had spent years believing I would never get. I had always thought that closure meant hearing an apology, getting answers, or finally understanding why someone hurt you. But standing there, staring at the city lights ahead, I realised something. Closure isn't something you get from someone else. It's something you decide for yourself. And I was ready to decide. I wasn't that same girl anymore. The one who searched for love in the wrong places, who ignored the warning signs, who thought heartbreak was something she deserved. I had rebuilt myself from the ruins of that past. And no matter what truth he had given me tonight, it didn't change the life I had now. It didn't change him waiting for me at home, the man who had given me a love that felt safe, real, and whole. I took a deep breath and started walking away from the cafe, from the past, from the girl I used to be. That night, as I stepped into my home, everything felt different. The walls, the air, even the way the light glowed in the living room, it all felt real. My heart wasn't stuck in the past anymore. It was here. He was waiting for me, a soft smile on his face, his eyes filled with warmth. Hey, he said, his voice gentle, like he already knew something was weighing on me. I smiled back, walking into his embrace, feeling the steadiness in his arms. Everything okay? He asked, pulling back just enough to search my face. I nodded. Yes, I whispered, and for the first time I truly meant it. I didn't tell him about the letter, I didn't tell him about the meeting, not because I was hiding it, but because it didn't matter anymore. My past wasn't a threat to my future. I wasn't carrying it with me into this next chapter, because some stories aren't meant to have second chances. Some stories are meant to end, and I was finally ready to close this one for good. The day of my wedding arrived, and as I stood in front of the mirror in my white dress, I saw a woman who had survived. A woman who had loved, lost, broken, healed, and found love again. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who once believed her world had ended in that moment of betrayal. If only she could see me now. If only she knew that the pain wouldn't last forever. That love would find her again in a way that felt real. Without fear, without doubt. I smiled at my reflection, a quiet moment of peace settling over me. This was my story now, a new chapter, a new beginning, free from ghosts of the past. As I walked down the aisle, my heart was steady, my mind clear. And as I looked into the eyes of the man waiting for me, I knew I had made the right choice. Because love isn't about holding on to what once was. It's about choosing what's real, what's here, and what's meant to be. Some chapters are meant to be closed, but the real story begins when you decide to move forward. Watch till the end to see how love, honesty, and second chances shape the future.